Hey gang, I'm Nikki LaCroce, and today I'm sharing the mic with Birgitta Visser. And Birgitta is the author of Becoming Authentically Me, as well as a light empowerment coach, divine channel, and light language healer, delivering messages to aid humanity by elevating our individual and collective consciousness. She is here to plant a seed to help unlock our true potential so we can better understand ourselves and the universe. Welcome to the show, Birgitta.
Thank you so much for having me, Nikki.
Yes. So you and I were just chatting a little bit before we hopped on here about really breaking bad patterns, breaking cycles, bringing forth the good things in our life through the power of manifestation. And that doesn't just sort of start, that's not really where the journey starts, right? You have to get to a point where you reach a moment in your life where you recognize that you want and need something to change. So would you mind sharing just a little bit about, sort of how you've created, I guess, really what inspired you to write your book and how you've created your business around your coaching?
Oh my God, that's a very broad question.
Oh, well, it's a loaded question. Take it wherever you'd like it to go.
Well, I started writing my book, I guess, in 2000. So it was a long time in the making, very long time in the making. But I stopped writing it in between because I had to go through my life experiences. And I mean, in a nutshell, yes, I am a healer, but I'm still healing myself every single day,
Mm-hmm.
And we just have to analyze, reevaluate our lives and see how we go through that. But for me, in a nutshell, as a child, I was abused by a friend of the family. And in the 80s, life was very, very different. And compared to what it is now, people are far more open. But I kept that in. I mean, I was about like 10 years old, 11 years old. And yeah, I just didn't know. And I mean, my personality kind of changed. I became more quiet, more withdrawn. But also when we returned to Holland, because I grew up in Singapore, Malaysia for a few years, my dad passed away. And he suffered from coronary heart disease. And he always said, when I go back to Holland, I will die. And that was,
Wow.
yeah.
Was he
Yeah.
ill before that?
Nope. But I think because when we suffer from traumatic issues, whether it's childhood trauma, because he was actually in a seminary at the age of 15, but he was abused there. And he came from a very big family, very strict family as well. And he carried so much pain with him that even though he meditated, that trauma wasn't released. And you can meditate all you like, but if you don't heal from the trauma within, if you don't, pull out the roots of it, but just band-aid it, you're going to keep walking around with that same patterning. And so he was only 44. He was pretty young.
Wow. Were you aware of the abuse that he had suffered prior to his passing, or was that something that came to light after the fact for you?
Something much later, years later, when my mom told me and my sister. And it's funny how once, and this is something I don't really often talk about, but once we're raised a certain way, our parents are raised a certain way, so they raise us a certain way. So that's that conditioning. And often what happens is the ancestral line carries trauma. And so that trauma is repeated and repeated and repeated. So that was actually really hard for me because I was 14 years old. It was hard on all of us because it was a boom, just like that. And at school, I was bullied because I really slouched because I wanted to be invisible, and I was really skinny, so I got bullied as well. And I do remember one episode out in Belgium in the forest, the Ardennes, and there was this kid, and he held my arm up high in front of everyone, and he's like, "Look how skinny she is." That stayed with me for a very, very long time. But kids don't realize that it can have a knock-on effect, because
for sure.
Yeah, I had no self-worth, was so insecure, felt so ugly. Even when I went to, I had to go to school, I would always go through the basement to enter the school premises, because if you went through the front, there were all the popular kids. Oh, heck no. I was like, oh God, I don't want them to look at me. That's how bad it was.
Oh, that's heartbreaking. And I understand in some way because I was bullied growing up a bit, and it's coming to light now in therapy after 5 years of it that a big part of what allowed me to end up in a really toxic and ultimately abusive relationship was my lack of self-worth that really stemmed from the lack of belonging and lack of acceptance and understanding that I felt as a child. So I can certainly understand how those things would impact you.
Yeah, and I totally, on that part, yeah, absolutely. You carry that into your adulthood because you don't heal. So even though for me, like I wanted to have a go at the modeling because I thought, oh my God, what if people see me, finally see me? Well, I mean, it's a very abusive industry. It's a cattle market. You're nothing. I mean, people just look through your portfolio and it was like, next. I couldn't even live with it. I would have lived under a bridge, So, and there's a lot of, at the time, there was a lot of sleeping around going on, and I was just not thick skinned enough. And so the agencies didn't really like me. And even as I got older and I went to agencies, even in New York, it was like I was rejected time and time and time again. And that was really tough, but I just kept going because I was like a chameleon. I mean, I was bartending, I was hostessing, I was doing promotion work, but that is who I am. I don't care if you put me in the middle of the Sahara, I will still find work, because that is just the mentality that I've always had. And yeah, I guess in some ways I'm just a survivor.
Well, that's exactly what I was about to ask. Do you feel like that's a survival mentality?
It was a survival mentality because in all of that, I mean, I had my stint with drugs, and when my stepdad passed away, and I could sit here and say, hey, you know what? I was with the wrong crowd, but actually, no, it was my responsibility. I mean, I took too many E's one night. I suffered memory loss, and that was kind of like a wake up call. And it was boom. After that, I was done. But the, when people say, oh, but why do you do drugs? Or why are you addicted to, or people have an addiction? And it's only because it's a form of escapism. Don't judge them for it. It's like they need to understand the root of the problem, but often it's so painful that they either drink themselves to death. My friend did that a few years ago, quite literally, and or drugs. It doesn't matter what your vice is. It's like, why do you do it? Why do you keep running from yourself? And I always call that playing Houdini with yourself. And trust me, Nikki, I did it, but I did it in a different form. I did it by working my socks off. Yeah. And two, by starving myself, because these were things I could control. I was just trying to escape the emotions that were pressing down on me. And I wouldn't say that I was depressed. I work with the many ascended masters, but also Archangel Michael. And he always goes, depression, it's really about stuff that's pressing on your mind, but also pressing on your heart. And basically, in one sentence, you can sum it up. You've shot your mind to hell, because that's exactly what you've done. Because everything stems from the mind. That's where we create everything. That's where we concoct everything. And that's how we manifest stuff.
I like that. I appreciate that you brought in your experience with really addictive patterns, right? Because to your point, it can be drugs, it can be alcohol, it can be, like you said, pick your vice. But overworking ourselves is such a pattern of behavior that many people would probably walk around saying that they don't have to address certain issues because they are avoidant in a way that is sort of acceptable from the perspective of society, and that you're a workaholic, right? But there's a reason that we have that term, because it's toxic for our behavior and the way that we show up in the world. And if you keep using that as a way to avoid or confront the things that are rooted in your soul that you're afraid to deal with, then you're going to, as you pointed out, to continue to perpetuate those patterns. And part of what you're also referencing is the importance of self-awareness and the recognition of those patterns, because being avoidant for a really long time, I think a lot of people like to believe that they don't actually have the problems that they have. And so when you are sort of standing in front of the mirror, so to speak, literally or figuratively, and being like, what's the deal? Like, what is it that's really holding you back from being who you need to be, who you can be? It requires us to let that guard down. And it's a really powerful transformation to experience that. But it is not just, all of a sudden you've come to this realization and everything's fine. It is so many highs and lows on that road to getting to who you are. And to your point earlier, is that like we are all still healing because we're trying to navigate things as they arise on that journey as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And more to the point, when you were talking about toxic relationships, I was the same. I rolled into toxic relationships because I had no self-worth. And I was I was such a broken bird. It was like, said on my forehead, looking for another broken bird, looking for another broken bird. Are you broken?
Yeah.
And so that's exactly what I attracted. Only because we are all mirror reflections of one another. In a way, we're all teachers of one another. And there's a lot of beauty in that. We don't always see it when we are right in the middle of a challenging relationship or an abusive relationship, but we allow that. And, we each have a responsibility for our own lives. We're not responsible for the other person. We cannot bend over backwards. It's something that I did. I allowed myself to be a doormat. I was really trying to save them and make sure that their life was okay. But at the end of the day, look what happened to me. I ended up getting hurt. And
you sacrificed your life for somebody else's life.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I look back now, and it took me I'm not saying many relationships because I didn't have many relationships. I had a few, and it was just, and I've been on my own since early 2015. And it's great. I always say, do you know what? I'm like a born again virgin, and it's fine. I'm happy on my own, because the most important thing is that you have a beautiful relationship with yourself. Because if you heal and you accept yourself the way you are, and you return to that acceptance of yourself and that love for yourself. For me, don't think, woohoo, Birgitta is, she's fine. She surpassed all of that. That's a lot of baloney, because I'm still learning, and I'm also still breaking patterns. I mean, 2023 has been a crap year of learning. That's exactly what it's been. And I'm just like, seriously, where's the sunshine in my life? But more to the point, they're like, yeah, but you can handle it, and you create the sunshine in your own life. You do. And we have asked for these challenges because our soul craves to skip out of this, what I call this 3D matrix, that created matrix, and it yearns to be free. It yearns to have a better understanding of life, and knows that we are capable of so much more. Just trying to navigate through this earthly jungle. And for me, gosh, I mean, I've studied many healing modalities, because in 2009, that was kind of my turning point, where my ex was a crack addict, and I didn't know that. And he lived with me in Holland. He was from the US, and he landed in bed, the Crips, but he really wanted to get better. But I don't think he was totally ready. He wanted to, but he didn't have a social security for Holland, and he needed that to enter rehab. But he had stolen from the Crips. They held him for ransom. I helped out the police, but I was just like, oh my gosh, I'd never encountered something like that. Never.
Oh my gosh. And can I interject for a second?
Yeah.
I didn't have an exact replica of what your experience was, but I found myself in these situations with my ex, who dealt with substance abuse that was very hidden from me. Like there was a double life situation happening. And in those moments, did you feel like you were sort of having these out of body experiences, in the sense of like, how is this my life? like, how is this? Like, I never could have fathomed that this is where my life would be. And now that you're beyond it, you can see, like, for me, it was hard to take accountability for my role in that. But I think that it was really, as horrible as it was, and I don't want to be like, everything happens for a reason, because I don't think that that's the right way to think about it. But I feel like I learned so much from everything that I allowed and everything that I made excuses for. Do you feel like coming out of that experience, you were able to have some clarity around that for yourself?
I was, but it was, I mean, I went a step further because, like I said, I mean, I tried to help him, tried to save him, tried to find him work, everything. Whilst I had a pretty good job in oil and gas, but when I helped out the police and they rescued him, the leader of the Crips called me and he says, if I ever find you, I'm going to kill you. And he's like, if I ever find your partner, right? And he said, you will never find him again because he'll be dead in a ditch somewhere. And that really shook me to my core. I mean,
how could it not?
Had already taken me out of Holland in the space of like 2 days, and I'd rented a property in the UK. But I was just so far gone. I downed a whole box of ibuprofens, and but I woke up after a very restful sleep, and my headache gone. That's all it did for me. And you can say it was a very lame attempt on my own life. And my mom just said to me, why don't you go see a counselor? Because I couldn't go on like that anymore. I really, really couldn't. And I did go and see a counselor. But for me, the counselor just said to me, Birgitta, you know what? You're strong enough. You're going to be fine. And that was it. And so for me, I had to really dig deep and do some soul searching and find I walked the holistic route. So that's why I opted for Reiki. I found a Reiki healer, and I don't know, it was just a beautiful experience. I always say that was my saving grace. That was the start of my healing journey, because I studied so many healing modalities. And there's one thing I forgot to mention, something I also don't really talk about, but it's just, going through my life, and even in New York, where I was rejected in the modeling, people think, oh, well, she lived a really glamorous life. Do you know what? Often I would either share, I had what do you call that? I would have a room to rent, and sometimes there'd just be a mattress on the floor. I'd live out of my suitcase, and I'd just, move around. But that didn't even bother me. And I think one of the things, because I've moved more times than my age, and I'm nearly 50, it's just like, I don't really care about stuff. It's just material. Do you really need it?
Yeah.
It's like, it's so much baggage that you take with you. But yes, going back to your question, really, about my book as well. So I finished, right? I was published a year ago, and that was the right time. But I had to do so much healing in between, and I learned how to channel. I walked through the Akashic Records, which, for people that don't know, it's going through your past lives. You walk through your past lives with an Akashic Record healer. And it's really, really powerful, because you understand the patterns, and you understand that other individuals in this lifetime, you would have had a lifetime in the past. And you carry some of that trauma with you within your DNA. And it just blew my mind. It really did. Because with the one in Holland, I apparently was in the Byzantium Empire, and I was a man. I had a family, and he was like my blood brother, but he betrayed me, and I was the one that ended up in prison over there and died. And in this lifetime, he was in the system in the US. But I do have to say that he's cleaned up his act now, and he's doing pretty well for himself. So that's really beautiful to see. But what we don't always understand, that when we are in these relationships, that we need to accept one another as we are. And if we don't sync with one another, if we don't gel with one another, if that chemistry is not there anymore, then it's time to lovingly part ways, because love is unconditional. Love is our essence, but we don't, because we put so many conditions on love. And it's like this legal binding contract with God knows how many freaking clauses. And it shouldn't be like that. Yeah.
I think part of it's time invested too, right? We see so much in relationships where, like, I was in this relationship for over a decade, and the mind-blowing thing to me is I recently found things that I had written to myself early on in the relationship and throughout the relationship, really indicating that it wasn't a right fit, knowing that it wasn't a right fit. But the other, in the same breath, sort of, or same pen strokes, like that it was me also trying to justify why that was the place that I should be and the person that I should be with. And much like you, like, I had a savior, like the desire to save this person, and not in a way that was like so over, like, I need to save you. It was like, you said something like you wanted them to have a good life. Like, that's exactly how I felt. Like, I want you to have a good life. We deserve to live a good life. And when my life started to crumble as a result of trying to make this person's life better, that's when it really became so apparent to me that, like, this is not right. This is not sustainable. This is not love. And I think we confuse sometimes that chemistry with this unconditional love, because we get mired down in like the construct and the expectations. And frankly, from my standpoint, and I think a lot of other people's, like, you see exiting a relationship as a failure, and that's not what it is. And it has to, like, we have to rethink that mindset, because it is not a failure. In fact, good for you if you understand that that has met the end of the road and that you can move on to something else. And like you said, in a loving, kind way, like, we can part ways. And I think that we, tragically, as human beings, often struggle to find the way to exit with grace, because oftentimes it reaches sort of a pinnacle of, honestly, disdain for a lot of people in their relationships with others, that it's like there's no putting that down gently. Like, it's going to be volatile, and when it's volatile, we're not thinking rationally about it.
No. And what we don't see is that we stump our own growth as much as we stump their growth.
Oh, for sure.
That's really, really important. I see many people staying together for the sake of staying together, or for their kids, but you're never obliged. It's so ingrained within society. But if you don't sing from the same hymn sheet, it's okay to move on and just be in gratitude that you were in that relationship, whatever kind of relationship that may be. It could be family, it could be any interpersonal relationship, but just be thankful because they've taught you something. And often when we meet people, and they really, it's like they get under our skin. And it's like, oh, but wait a minute. What is this telling me? What do I need to heal? Rather than going, oh my God, I want to strangle this person. And keep on keeping like that. No. Yeah. It's about realizing that. And that is actually the beauty of life. I really, really had to learn, because I was suffering from donkey syndrome. Honestly, I had to learn the lesson a few times. My guides were going, hey, Birgitta, well, that didn't really turn out well. Well, we're going to send you someone new. It's a bit of a different package, different country. Let's see what you do.
Yeah. Well, and you're challenged, right? You're challenged to figure it out. And I mean, I see this in my own past. I see this with friends of mine, and you look at it and it's like, we have to consciously make a different decision if we want a different outcome. And it's like one of the biggest things that I've learned in the past several years is, because it feels comfortable doesn't mean it's right, because we can be very comfortable in things that are toxic. And the discomfort, the leaving that circumstance behind or those patterns behind, can often result in discomfort because it's unfamiliar. And that's really is what you need to do to move forward in your own life. Do you find that that's been your experience as well?
Absolutely. At dis-ease within ourselves, and we make ourselves ill. And ill is an acronym for imbalanced of love and light, because that's exactly what it is. That's what we've done to ourselves. We've beat ourselves up in the boxing ring and we just keep doing it. And it's like, well, universe is like, yeah, but give yourself a little love,
Yeah. We have to make space to do that, right? And it's really hard. Like you're saying, like 2023 has been a hard year for you. And the thing that, I think is beautiful I'm going to try to look at this optimistically as an objective onlooker for you is like, because you know everything that you know from your experiences that you've had, while this might be a turbulent or tumultuous year, you also understand that like there is learning to be done in these moments and that you can hopefully, whether now or in the future, give yourself grace and know that like this is like one of those coming of becoming who we are moments. And that's really what I think we struggle to give ourselves grace when we're in those really hard moments sometimes. So it's good to know that you have the background and the awareness and you've had the experience to be able to sort of reflect on that, hopefully in those moments that are a bit more challenging.
Yeah, that is very true. We become more aware, consciously aware of why we are having these experiences.
Yes.
So at that point, you can do something about it rather than huffing and puffing like the big bad wolf,
Yeah.
And that's the big difference. So I just power through it. And as you know, for many, many months, I manifested going to Spain. So finally, boom, I found what I was looking for. And I just left it up to the universe because I looked from one end to the other and I left it open. And so I'm moving in a few weeks.
That's amazing.
When I was out there, I'm going to tell you, there were so many synchronicities that happened to me. I was like blown away. And I thought, you know what? I love it here. I just love it here. The culture is completely different. Yes, there are many, many Europeans, especially Swedish, Norwegians, Germans as well. But just peace and tranquility.
Like it feels like your soul is at home in a way.
Yeah, I will be so much more at ease. Plus, the cost of living is half of what it is here in the UK. And I don't. It's one of the things when we are talking about being a workaholic, that is one of the patterns that I do have. But I know that, and I put my foot down because this is not my passion. This is not my corporate job. Is just a job.
Mm-hmm.
And people say, yeah, we need to work to be able to live and to pay our bills. Yes. And then I always say, but yeah, and look who's talking. Yes.
I get it.
Like money is like the drug, right? That keeps us in that fixed employment because we need to pay our bills.
Yeah.
But that's like being stuck in that rat race, in that in the sewer system, as I like to call it. And you have to follow your passions. And even if that means that you work for a little while and do stuff that you may not really like, but you work towards that goal. And I think that is the main thing. I don't care what you want to do in life. For some people, they have a passion of taking care of their family, and that is fine too.
Yep.
And for some others, they want to make a difference in the world, or they want to work on themselves and inspire others to become a better version of themselves. And the only way you can do that is when you heal yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. And so one of the things that I would love to go back to a little bit, because I don't know that a lot of people are as familiar with sort of the healing modalities as you are. And I will be honest, I know bits and pieces of some of the types of work that you do, but I am also not as educated as I could be. And so I think part of what I'd love to know a little bit more about too is how, learning more about like either your Akashic records or just in general, like past lives has helped impact the way you approach your present life.
Yeah, I mean, so much changed. In one of my lifetimes, I've had so many lifetimes, even galactic ones. I've been there since the dawn of time. And it's I talk about a lot of past lives. I had one earlier today, actually, because I had a light language healing. People are like, what is light language healing? What does it do?
Yes.
And it's something really, really different. It's very, very up and coming now. It's more so in the US than the UK, but I love it. I absolutely love doing it, giving it to clients. But when I speak it, I'm happy to give a demo in a minute to you, like a 1 minute demo.
Okay.
Your mind is like, what the hell is this? What is this gobbledygook? And I always call it like Minionese language, minions. But it doesn't matter because your soul understands these light codes and it absorbs these light codes. It's like a very form of ancient healing. It's galactic healing. I work a lot with the galactics, like the Pleiadians, the Syrians, the Arturians, even the Elfin Kingdom, Lemurians, the Atlanteans. So a lot of the mermaids. Okay. So it's all different. It's very, very powerful healing. And for me, I studied many healing modalities, and I even taught Reiki. I did EFT. I became a meditation teacher because it's all about heal thyself, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's the same thing. So that's light language. But even this afternoon, I was like, oh my God, what is this? I was literally, and this was somewhere in South America, this happened this afternoon, and I need to write it down. I was literally hanging in a very old created cage of metal, that very rusty metal, and I was hanging above lava, and they were lowering me down. It was like a sacrifice, lowering me down really slowly until I incinerated bit by bit. And I was like, this is insane. But that's not the only life. I mean, other lifetimes I've had. I've lived in the Middle Ages. I've been an inquisitor in the South Americas. I wasn't a very nice person. I really wasn't, because I tortured people. And
can I ask a question? Oh, I'm sorry. Finish what you were saying first.
Yeah. So I waterboarded people. And it's really strange because there were like Portuguese words coming through. And I'm like, what the heck does that mean? So I looked it up afterwards. So I haven't always been a goody two shoes. But there were times where, like, in another lifetime, I was like a nun and I could see spirit and speak to spirit. And I was always beaten down for it because I was an orphan in this nunnery. So with another ex, for instance, in the one in Florida that harassed me and wouldn't leave me alone, he poisoned me in another lifetime in the Middle Ages with like an arsenic, because all he wanted was my money at the time. And so instead of helping to, heal me back to health, he was slowly poisoning me. And that took like several months until it was too late. And
How do you access that and understand that to be, I'm going to use the phrase to be true, even though that's like probably not the correct language for it, but I've never done any sort of like past like life regression or anything like that. But I understand conceptually like what you're saying, but I don't understand like how you get to that and how you feel that is part of you.
So, for instance, with this lifetime with my ex, he's doing very well out in Florida for himself now. But this was through the Akashic record healer, Alania Starhawk. And it just resonated with my soul. But what happened after that healing, his energy changed too. And all of a sudden, boom, he backed off and he started to change his life.
Interesting.
And so that is because those ties were severed and I needed to heal from that experience. And that was very, very powerful for me. But even after that, even when I was writing or I was just sitting down very quietly, past lives would I can't explain that to you. They would pass me by in like a flash,
Mm-hmm.
and I could just feel that. I've lived in the times of Julius Caesar. I was a politician. Very, very interesting. So I do channel a lot of in my book, especially a lot of my past lives from that aspect of who I was.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting because I was a giant, or, a half breed as well. So that was really interesting. And I looked at myself and I was like, gee, I'm hairy. And this is millions of years ago, but I can sit in that essence now. But it took for me to go and see someone to open myself back up. And that was the same with the channeling. I went to a workshop because I was so down in the dumps with this ex that wouldn't leave me alone, and I knew I needed to heal myself. I couldn't go on like this anymore, because at the time, Nikki, I was often on the floor screaming at spirit and crying and just lying there in the dark on the floor. That's how bad it was. And I just thought to myself, I don't deserve this. Why is that? It really, like a lot of people say, why is this happening to me?
Yeah, begging for relief.
Rather than saying, well, actually, why is this happening for me? What do I need to do to change? Well, I threw it into the universe. And so that's when I started to follow the breadcrumbs. And so I ended up with Melania Starhawk. But when she had this workshop, I went to it, How to Become a Channel. And everyone, it was a big group, and they were just sitting on chairs, and I'm an antisocial shitbird, so I was sitting somewhere in the corner. and she did this meditation, and she counted 2, 3, and then back off after half an hour from 3 to 1. Well, heck knows where I went, because once she counted back, that's when I came back into the room. That's how powerful her meditation was with the sound bowls. And everyone's like, oh my God, I saw these ascended masters, the archangels. I got this message. I saw these colors and blah, 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 blah. I saw my guides. Well, I saw jack sugary banana shit. And so I was not happy, not happy.
Did you feel like that made you skeptical?
Not skeptical. I was crying. So I was wiping the tears with the sleeve of my vest. But what she said at that point was, how she started was, she took a notepad and a pen, and all she said to the universe, to her guides, was like, I am ready to receive. Well, that stayed with me, because when the class finished, boom, I was out the door, hopped in my car, went home. And that's exactly what I did that night. And I think because my mind was just so far gone, that I just started to write. And it was amazing. I mean, actually, I was crying tears of joy in my living room, because it was like it was old English prose. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. I'm really good at something. Yes, I could help. I could teach Reiki, and sometimes I saw stuff, but this was like my niche. And so I started to do this every single day, because it's like going to the gym, or, learning to ride a bike. And finally, I took out my card decks, and I just picked a card, shuffled it, picked a card. And whoever it was, whichever ascended master, the deity, archangel, you name it, I would just sit there with a card and say, do you have a message for me? Or can you tell me something about your past lives? And that would just flow. I didn't use Google. No, I didn't cheat. So that's how it worked for me. Mm-hmm. That's really how it worked for me. And I've loved channeling ever since. Yeah. Yes, life has taken over a little bit, and I'm finishing writing of my second book, which I will finish by the end of this year. That's very much with the Indian deities, and to me, they're all hilarious. They talk about life. Many of the ascended masters do anyway. They talk about life in a fun and loving way. Everyone channels them differently, but for me, it's been so healing to have them along my journey and just look at the flip side of life and just laugh about it, laugh about your experiences, because they're always like, why do you take life so seriously? Yes, we know the quote, why do you take life so seriously? You're not going to get out alive anyway. But we get so absorbed within our experiences that we don't understand the lesson entailed within.
Yeah.
You know, life is like a game of cosmic evolution. When people are like, yeah, but if life's a game, why are we here? Oh, well, first of all, you're here to return to a love for yourself and everyone around you and all sentient beings. And second, you're here to help elevate the consciousness of Gaia or Mother Earth. That's why you're here. And this game of evolution has been played billions of years, not just on this planet, but many, many other planets. And it's great because we're all energy. Yes, we're stuck in this organic blob, but we are energy, and we are here to learn to manipulate the energies and create a life basically that we desire. But we've so forgotten that we are energy, that we are alchemists. We're divine alchemists. We can transform anything from that lead to gold. So, taking away the heaviness, transmuting the heaviness, healing, and returning to a far more enlightened version of ourselves. And when we get rid of the gunk that's stuck in our mind, all the hurt and everything, and we let that go, and we learn to love ourselves a little bit more, our life does get better. Doesn't mean we don't have our challenges. We do, but we understand them better, and we can just hop the hurdles easier.
Yeah, absolutely. And something that you said about, kind of going through these experiences and recognizing them, for people do take life too seriously. And when we look back at our lives and we see sort of in retrospect things that we took too seriously when we were younger. My wife and I were just talking about this, being in middle school when like that like a breakup was like the just absolute worst thing that ever could have happened to you with this person that you were never going to be with for the rest of your life anyway, or like odds are you're not going to be, right? And it's like, but everything in our being believes that that is the worst thing that could ever happen to us. And then you grow up and you have more experiences and you're like, well, that's definitely not the worst thing that could happen to me. And like, we start to evolve with that. Oh, as you said, the awareness of sort of the criticality with which we should see the events that are happening, right? Even the things that you and I have been through that are deeply traumatic or have been abusive, what that does is that informs our decisions moving forward to be able to say, okay, well, I recognize that and I'm not going to fall into that pattern. And in terms of that kind of relating to the taking things seriously, it's like we have to take ourselves seriously. We have to apply like some sense of, as you said, self-acceptance, self-awareness to be able to move forward and have the life that we want. But like allow those moments of levity, because the things that also got me through those hardest moments in my life were moments of laughter with my friends and family, were those pieces of joy that came out of the absolute rubble, And so I think sometimes it's in those most serious moments that we're forced to look at them with a lighter heart, especially in the aftermath.
Yeah. Yeah, I totally agree with you on that. I do.
So as we're kind of like rounding out the episode here, I think one of the things that would be really wonderful to understand is the work that you're doing now and how you're looking to help people achieve that higher consciousness. And you've mentioned some of this through your light language healing and things like that, but you have Powerful Soul Healing is your coaching business. Is that the correct way to refer to it? Would you say it's coaching, or is it more holistic than that?
More holistic. It's more empowering others to live their dreams. And the only way they're going to do that is by looking at themselves in the mirror and saying, you know what, I'm going to take responsibility for my life, and I want to heal. That is the key ingredient. But I
Absolutely.
was going to say, if you want a short demo on light language, then I'm happy to do it.
I would love that. Please. I have no idea what light language is, so I am here for it. Let's do it.
Yes. So I'm going to ask you, well, before I say close your eyes, is there an intent for your listeners that they want to focus on? Do you think fear or clarity, joy, peace?
Let's go with peace.
Peace?
Mm-hmm.
Finding the inner Zen. I call that the Kung Fu Panda. Finding your inner Zen.
I love it.
All right. So, yeah. All right. So close your eyes.
Okay.
And I want you to take a very, very deep breath in, all the way from your root chakra up to your crown chakra. And just hold it. And gently breathe out. And take another very deep breath in. Hold it. And breathe back out. And just keep breathing in and out whilst I bring through the light codes. And all I'm going to say is have an open mind and simply allow the light codes to flow through you. So kini ke sa anta kini makatasi kini ke tali mikita o shi ha hi ni sila ha ni hi ama kushi titi ama o kushiti ya te ki ama ka utiti ti mala ku ushi ama ushi niki titi ala mi u kushinikata lui mikita ai mu u. They're saying, they're pouring like a golden shower over you. I know we're talking about inner peace, but they're also bringing through codes of joy. Susilia lema kataluki itkimaka nikitaya mahanikita usini haye ku ushikite ini malahahati kiti yamahui kiti atikito. Pisini yamakata nikititi alui matiti amoya makatata nene kushikatu i puini niti amalakatu unoini kiti ashikutuyimi ika tushi tukitini ma gulimi kiti shemalaku uimiti hushi haya mahuya mahati kiti ushimini and it's like they're saying flow through the waters of your beautiful self and allow for the heaviness to flow back out down into the earth, to allow for the light to permeate back into the cracks of your beautiful soul. Sikinikiti ayamahasukutui milikataya masui isiaka ushi nikituya mahatikiti yama ui nikiti ushikiti isimiya atakayumi. And it's like they're saying you're standing on the beach with your feet in the water, and it's like the ebb and flow of life, the rolling in of the experiences and the letting go of the trauma held within. Susiki ini misilaya mahatiktu isikita nisikiti yamalaku isia ushia mahu ka ati tini mikita atatiti akatiki atiti yama uatiki ushiti tika tu i tu sila hu. And they gently retreat. And as always, I will say that the healing, these DNA activations, the light codes will stay with you as long as it's required to integrate within you. And I thank you for being here. And whenever you're ready, just take another very deep breath in and gently release that. And merely open your eyes when you're ready.
It's like a peaceful disorientation. It was interesting that you said about the joy as well, because when you first said, kind of what intention, my immediate thought was joy. But then when you said peace, I thought inner peace is really what I I want people to have, because I think inner peace can allow us to experience more joy.
Yeah.
And the point where you spoke to being at kind of the water's edge in the ocean was really moving to me, because I am very much a water person at my core. I'm a Scorpio, so I'm a water sign as well. But I growing up, the beach has been a place of solace for myself and my family. And since losing my mom, what I envisioned and what I felt in that moment was something that I've envisioned when reaching out to my mom spiritually and like feeling her presence with me in that moment. So that was like really significant. Thank you.
All right, you're welcome. Yeah. It was a blending of some light beings I don't know with a bit of the Lemurians, but it's always very interesting for me. Sometimes it's okay for me not to know who they are because they just have this light being form. I'm lying. There were also the mentees. They are healers. They are incredible healers.
And what was that? Sorry.
The mentees. I don't normally work with them, funnily enough, but they're incredible healers. They're very meticulous with their healing, which is what I did see. Very, very meticulous. But for me, it's always very humbling that I'm able to do this. I love it because it benefits the client. I love seeing that, but it also benefits me.
I mean, and it's something that I've never experienced. And I feel like there's, especially when it comes to holistic healing and entering that state of just like mind and body and spirit, a lot of people can be skeptical, but it's interesting because a lot of people are also skeptical about like very Western approaches like therapy and things like that. And so it's like, to me, I feel like a big part of healing is sensing what feels right to you and embracing that. And like you said at the very beginning of that demo, like making sure you have an open mind and allow yourself that. I think if this were honestly even a year ago, I probably would not have been able to have as much of an open mind, and not for lack of desire to, but I think ignorance plays a large part in not wanting to understand certain things.
But that's okay. I always say to people, it doesn't matter if you don't want a light language healing. You have to do whatever agrees with your soul. Mm-hmm. That's what you should do. I don't care if it's seeing a counselor or a different kind of therapist. It doesn't matter. Rome wasn't built in a day, and there are different ways to roam. So,
yes. Oh, I love that.
And that's okay. My mom doesn't believe in anything I do, but I don't love her any less. Why would I?
Right. Yeah. I think that's one of the really beautiful things about humanity too, is that we have the opportunity, as you've been saying throughout the episode, to love and accept who we are. And that shouldn't change our ability to love and accept others or their ability to love and accept us.
Absolutely. If we all could think like that, wouldn't the world be a more beautiful and harmonious place to live in?
Yes. I have to say, Birgitta, this is so aligned with where I'm feeling, especially in the last 24 hours. My wife and I were watching a show on Netflix I think Down for Love. And so it's watching people with Down syndrome date, and
awesome.
It was just so incredibly beautiful. And I was like, there's only 5 episodes. I'm so emotionally invested in these people. Like, I need to know what else happens. But it was just like, I said to her, this is the thing that I feel called to, is like, I want to help the world be a more loving place. I want to help the world see, like, people see that like we have the opportunity to be kinder and more loving to each other. And I feel like there's such a strong message in what you're doing around that as well. And I'm so appreciative of that.
And that's why at the end of my book, it says, by descended Master Saint Germain, he says, life is merely a return to love, nothing more, nothing less.
Oh, that's beautiful. That's such a great way to end the episode. Birgitta, this has been such a wonderful conversation. I'm so grateful to have had it with you. I know that people can learn more about you on your website at powersoulhealing.com, but is there anywhere else you'd like them to follow you?
You can find me on my YouTube channel, Power Soul Healing, and I'm on Instagram as well under Universal Light Warriors.
Amazing. And we'll put all of that in the show notes. But in the meantime, that is all for this episode of Who the Fuck. Thank you so much, Birgitta, and gang. We will catch you next time.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for listening to Who the Fuck. And if you like what you hear, share the show with your friends, family, coworkers, or anyone else you think needs a healthy dose of introspection and raw authenticity. Feel free to rate and review wherever you get your podcasts. It's always appreciated. And you can also visit whothefck.com to keep up to date with what's new in my world and for exclusive bonus content.